They told you that you had potential, that you were different, that you were ahead of everyone else. You were praised, rewarded, treated like you were destined for something greater. And for a while it seemed true. You excelled effortlessly, picked things up faster than others, and stood out in ways that made people take notice. Teachers admired your quick thinking, family members boasted about your abilities, and classmates turned to you for answers. Success felt natural, almost automatic, like you were playing life on an easier difficulty setting. But somewhere along the way, that confidence faded. The effortless wins became rarer, the praise less frequent. Suddenly, things that once came easily now required effort, and instead of rising to the challenge, you hesitated. You began second-guessing yourself, avoiding risks, shrinking away from anything that might prove you weren't as exceptional as everyone believed. Now, instead of being ahead, you feel stuck. Instead of feeling gifted, you feel disconnected. You look around and see people moving forward, building careers, forming relationships, finding their place in the world, while you remain stagnant, uncertain of how to break free. On the outside, you're still competent, still capable. You can hold conversations, complete tasks, and even convince others that you're doing fine. But inside, there's this quiet emptiness, like you're watching life happen to other people while you stay frozen in place. You scroll through messages but don't know what to say. You watch as others seem to thrive, wondering why you feel like an outsider looking in. And the worst part, you can't even explain why, because everything is supposed to be fine. You have the skills, the intelligence, the potential. So why does it feel like none of it matters? It turns out there's a reason so many smart kids grow up feeling lost. When you build your entire identity around being intelligent, it becomes a double-edged sword. The very thing that made you stand out as a child, the quick thinking, the ability to grasp concepts effortlessly, the praise that came with every success, becomes the thing that holds you back as an adult. Because intelligence, when tied to identity, stops being a tool and starts being a burden. Every achievement reinforces the belief that your worth comes from being exceptional, from getting things right the first time, from always knowing the answer. And when that belief takes root, it quietly shapes how you approach life. You start avoiding challenges that might expose a weakness. You hesitate before trying something new, afraid that struggling will make you look less capable. You second-guess yourself constantly, analyzing every decision to avoid mistakes. And worst of all, you slowly begin isolating yourself. Not because you want to, but because every interaction, every expectation feels like another test you have to pass. The good news is, it's not a flaw. It's not failure. It's not some inherent defect in you. It's a survival strategy, a pattern your mind created to protect you, to keep you safe, to ensure that you continued receiving the validation and approval that once made you feel special. But the strategies that helped you thrive as a child aren't the same ones that will help you build a fulfilling life as an adult. And if you don't understand why this happens, you can spend years trapped in the same cycle, avoiding, hesitating, overanalyzing, withdrawing, until one day you look around and realize you don't even recognize yourself anymore. The real turning point comes when you recognize how this pattern took hold, when you see the walls you unknowingly built around yourself. Because once you understand how it happened, you can start undoing it. When we're young, identity is simple. A child doesn't see themselves as a complex individual with layers of personality and potential. Instead, they latch onto a few defining traits and make them their entire identity. Maybe they're the kid who loves dinosaurs, the one who only eats mac and cheese, or the one who's obsessed with drawing. It's a narrow way of seeing yourself, but that's how identity forms in early life. Through repetition, reinforcement, and the way others reflect you back to yourself. The world tells you who you are, and you believe it. And one of the most powerful labels a child can receive is being told they're smart, because intelligence isn't just another personality trait. It's treated like a rare gift, something special that sets them apart from the rest. That label sticks. It follows them everywhere, shaping how they see themselves and how they expect the world to work. It becomes part of their foundation, the way they understand their worth and their place in the world. And in the beginning, it feels incredible, because being smart makes life easy. You don't have to struggle like other kids. You don't have to study as hard. You pick up concepts quickly. You breeze through challenges while others stumble, and that makes you feel special. You start to believe that intelligence is your defining trait, the thing that makes you valuable. It sets you apart in the best way possible. But hidden beneath all that praise is something far more dangerous, because what people are actually rewarding isn't intelligence. It's effortlessness. You don't get praised for how hard you work. You get praised for how little effort it takes you to succeed. When you get the answer right on the first try, when you finish the test before everyone else, when you solve problems in your head while others struggle on paper, that's when people take notice. And without realizing it, you internalize a quiet but destructive belief. If I'm truly smart, things should always be easy for me. If intelligence is your identity, then struggling isn't just frustrating. It feels like proof that you're not who everyone says you are. And that belief, once planted, will shape how you approach challenges for the rest of your life. Now, instead of leaning into the difficulty, you start avoiding it. You hesitate before raising your hand unless you're absolutely sure. You avoid activities where you might fail. You pick safe paths, ones that don't expose your weaknesses. And over time, your world gets smaller. You only do things you're already good at. You only take on challenges that won't risk your self-image. And while other people are out there exploring, trying, failing, and growing, you're stuck, trapped inside a comfort zone that feels safer but is slowly suffocating you. And then comes the isolation, because when you stop growing, you also stop connecting. Friendships, relationships, and social bonds are built on shared experiences, on being part of a team, struggling together, learning together, going through awkward moments, and coming out the other side. But if you've made avoiding failure your top priority, you opt out of those experiences. You skip the club because you might not be good at it. You avoid the sport because it's unfamiliar. You keep to yourself instead of joining the group. And without realizing it, you remove yourself from the flow of social life. But you still crave connection. So you do the only thing you know how to do. You analyze. You study people instead of relating to them. You watch, observe, try to predict behavior. And that leads to something called cognitive empathy, the ability to understand people logically, but not necessarily feel emotionally connected. It works in conversations. You can navigate social settings, maybe even seem charismatic, but it's draining, because instead of just being present with people, you're constantly thinking about what to say, how to respond, how to avoid looking foolish. Socializing becomes something you have to be good at, and since you don't want to fail, you start avoiding it too. This is when the loneliness sets in, but you tell yourself you're smart. You should be able to think your way out of this. So you turn to logic. You try to reason your way into feeling better. You write out arguments about why you should be fine. You analyze your own behavior, trying to solve yourself like a problem. But none of it works, because intelligence was never designed to fix emotional pain. It's great for solving external problems, but when you try to use it for self-worth, it just loops endlessly. Because there is no logical answer to the question, am I enough? That question can only be answered emotionally. And for many smart kids, emotional growth was the one thing that got left behind. And when the pain becomes too much, the final defense mechanism kicks in. Instead of admitting loneliness, you tell yourself you're just different, that you don't relate to people because they're not as deep, that surface-level friendships aren't for you, that you're above it, but deep down it's not superiority. It's protection, because admitting the truth, that you feel left out, that you're not sure how to connect, hurts more than pretending you don't need anyone. But that mindset builds a wall between you and the world. It keeps you isolated, even when you want to reach out, because real connection requires vulnerability. It requires being seen as you are, without the shield of intelligence to hide behind. So how do you break free? The first step, non-negotiable, is letting go of the identity of the smart kid. Not because intelligence is bad, but because basing your self-worth on it is dangerous. If your value comes from how easily you succeed, you will do everything in your power to avoid effort, failure, and anything that might make you look less than exceptional. And that's how you stay stuck. The only way out is to build a new foundation, not one based on being smart, but on being willing to grow. Instead of asking, what will make me look intelligent? You start asking, what will help me move forward? Instead of protecting your pride, you embrace discomfort. You stop trying to be perfect and start allowing yourself to be a beginner, to struggle, to learn. You do things not to win, but to participate. And yes, it feels awkward. It feels like losing something, but in reality, it's the first real step toward becoming whole. The old identity told you your value came from being exceptional. The new one reminds you that your value comes from being human. And being human means you don't have to have all the answers. You're allowed to be uncertain, to make mistakes, to grow at your own pace. If you've spent your whole life trying to be the smartest person in the room, and now you don't know how to be anything else, this is where you begin. You stop trying to be impressive, you start trying to be real, because you don't need to be extraordinary to belong. You just need to be willing to show up, even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you're not sure what you're doing. And if you can do that, if you can let go of the pressure to be above it all, you'll finally start to feel something again. Connection, not because you earned it, not because you proved yourself, but because for the first time in a long time, you're actually here, present, alive, and part of the world again.